Thank you, Chitra ma'am, and thank you, Murli, for involving me. Although we did not have any surgical sessions, but this is the perfect setting for having complications. We are running late and we are trying to rush up things. So I'll start with recognizing, preventing, and managing the complications of strabismus surgery. So some of the complications may be acceptable with long-term results like small under and overcorrections, minimal DVDs, slight lid fissure anomalies, incompetences, minimal conjunctival redness, diplopia only in the extreme cases, and mild Brown syndrome. Some complications may be self-limiting like transient suture reactions, hemorrhages, lid edemas, corneal abrasions, and Dillon, which can heal promptly. Now, certainly there could be problems of wrongs when we are trying to rush up things. The problems of wrongs could be wrong muscle, wrong eye, wrong surgery, or a wrong patient. So to prevent all this, we have to look at the records very, very carefully and choose the correct eye when we are operating. Of course, we can get away with operating the wrong eye in the comitant squint, but yes, in the incomitant squint, you can have a problem if you operate the other eye. Now, lid fissure anomalies, they can come up as palpable aperture changes, which could be large recessions causing widening and large resections causing narrowing. When we try and operate vertical recti, we have vertical lid problems in the terms of blepharotosis or lid retractions. So whenever we do horizontal muscle surgery, we follow the principle of divide and rule as the Englishmen proposed and we did to India. So we try and divide the surgery between the two muscles rather than doing large recessions or resections on a single muscle. Inferior rectus has a direct and proportionate effect on the lower lid position. So limit the recessions to 5 millimeters and try and snip off the capsulopalpable fascia, which is just 5 millimeters posterior to the insertion of inferior rectus. Whenever we are planning superior rectus surgery, try and sever the connections between the LPS and SR, because large recessions, when we are planning for DVD, say for more than 10 millimeters, we can have significant lid retractions if these are not done. Now, this is a case of left lateral rectus palsy. We do a good job, do a MR recession with VRT, half with VRT. The alignment is absolutely fine, but because of large recessions and VRT, we land up with lid fissure abnormalities. We can see the left eye is showing a widened palpable aperture. Now, suture-related problems could be allergic reactions, granulomas, and abscess. We can deal with them with the help of topical steroids, antibiotics in case of abscesses. At times, we may have to drain the abscess and remove the nidus. And very, very rarely, we can have to even surgically excise or repeat this strabismus surgery. Now, we have problems like lost muscle tendon or tendon ruptures. They are usually seen in tight recti muscle, and the most common muscle to be lost is the medial rectus. And the perfect setting for this is a thin atrophic muscle, and we try to put traction on the muscle to bring it to our side so as to pass sutures. So we have to avoid this kind of maneuvers and pass sutures little away from the actual site of insertion, immediately close to insertion. Then we can have slow slippage of muscles, which could be a stretch scar. Slip recession would cause overcorrection and slip resection would cause undercorrections, but both of them would cause diminished ductions in that particular gaze. Prevention would be to take bites about 0.5 to 1 millimeters behind the insertion of the clamp and have a scleral track of about 1.5 millimeters and try and use surgeon's knot or the square knot so that the knot doesn't open and the muscle doesn't slip back. Now, this is a patient where we do not have any surgical records, but the patient has been operated, which eye we don't know, but she's having a less deviation when she's fixing with the right eye, but more when she's fixing with the left eye. Probably the left medial rectus has been slipped. The first point would be to make this squint comitant, and then we try and correct the strabismus in these patients. Now we can have unacceptable over and under corrections, which are not intended by the surgeon, because sometimes we do intend slight under and over corrections. Prevention here would be to have a careful and accurate workup, choice of the correct surgery, proper execution of the plan, whatever we have made, and the experience, because similar type of patients, similar type of squints react almost in the similar way. Treatment for over and under corrections could be prisms, glasses, and whenever we are planning a resurgery in these cases, carefully measure whatever has happened, assess the force and velocity, and find out what has happened during the surgery. Go back and look at the surgery. Was something wrong which has happened, and we can just undo it. Consecutive esotropia could be an overcorrection. So this is a patient who had a 30 prism diopters of consecutive esotropia with diplopia. So before the surgery, she had a basic IDS of 30 prism diopters. So my plan was to do a bilateral LR recessions by 7 millimeters under GA. And whenever I plan bilateral LR recessions, we intend to around 14 millimeters of LRs. In my hands, it usually gives 28 prism diopters, and for 30 prism diopters, she was fine. But this 30 prism diopter of exotropia going into 30 prism diopters of ESO, giving a correction of approximately 60 prism diopters were too much for me. And for a 30% diopters of EZO, I usually plan a bilateral MR recession by 4.5 to 5 millimeters. But looking at this patient, she had a very strong dose response curve. So we thought of doing one MR by 5 millimeters, and do not forget to pray in such patients. So this is the photograph. The first one is showing you pre-surgery, which is the 30% diopters of EXO. The post-op day 1, which is showing you a 30% diopters of EZO. And this is 6 weeks post-op. We waited for this to settle down, but it didn't actually. And then we went ahead with the single MR recession of the right eye, and the patient is boom, absolutely fine. She's aligned. But these kind of calculations we can do only in our own strabismus surgeries where we know what we have done in these patients. Now, anti-segment ischemia can occur when we are doing more number of recti muscles, or it could be a problem in the generalized circulation of the patients. There are various grades of anti-segment ischemia from 1 to 4, right from decreased iris perfusion to pupillary signs to uveitis to keratopathy. We can get away with reperfusion to the deep collateral circulations. First 3 grades are not clinically important, but the grade 4, which can cause corneal edema, heavy flare, cells, hypopyon, pupillary signs, cataract, retinal changes could be troublesome. Now, prevention would be to avoid detaching all the 4 recti, doing only 2 recti per procedure, and no more than 3 recti should be done in a lifetime of a patient. If we are trying to do more recti, then we should think of vessel sparing surgery. Vertical recti tend to have more anterior ciliary vessels, and they are not backed up by the posterior ciliary vessels. Older and vascular compromised patients are most susceptible to all these problems, and we cannot predict which patient is going to have anti-segment ischemia and which is not going to have. Treatment is with topical steroids and cycloplegics. Diplopia, I think the treatment and management has already been discussed, but it is a penalty we pay for having a simultaneous macular perception or coming out of suppression scotoma. So I think I'll not go in the management of diplopia, which has already been taken care by Dr. Rohit. Now, some complications can be a threat to vision, like globe perforation, detachments, vitreous and orbital hemorrhages, hyphema, endophthalmitis, orbital cellulitis, cataract, subluxations. These all can happen after a mechanical or a microbiological event following an inadvertent scleral perforation. So this is very important to take care of. Now, globe perforation, it may lead to vitreous hemorrhage, detachment, and endophthalmitis. Better instrumentation like microscopes and needles have definitely reduced the incidences. So whenever we try these needles, we always use spatulated needles and pass the needles tangential to the sclera, avoid deep passage, use hangback or hemi-hangback in thin sclerae, Marfan's, and operated RD patients. A slight give way feeling should arouse a suspicion of perforation. And whenever we land up with this, try and use a cotton spud to increase the pressure so that if there is a subretinal bleed, there is not much of a spread. And a submacular bleed while doing a surgery for IO and LR is very dangerous because it can give rise to a submacular bleed and compromised vision. Screen the retina, start dilating the pupil during the squint surgery. Soon after the surgery, you can screen the retina and put up a cryo mark because we know where the perforation has occurred. Endophthalmitis can occur, but again, it is to be managed by the retina people. Orbital cellulitis is again a rare complication. It can cause all these problems like proptosis, redness, chemosis, swelling, and you have to use aseptic precautions to prevent it. Treatment is by broad spectrum antibiotics. Now, this is a case of orbital cellulitis following periosteal anchor. Probably this microbes came from Lamina preparatia and the nasal cavity. And then we treated this patient with systemic antibiotics. We got away with the orbital cellulitis, but the effect of surgery was gone. So the complications, they are part and parcel of surgery and surgeon's life. The only way of eliminating complications is not doing surgeries or defying whatever complications you have. That's not the way. Thank you for the attention.